This Sovryn short is dedicated to Chris Pasquini. He held the Triforce high.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
Woo, the man of tomorrow is here, and I get the great honor of reviewing in this Sovryn Shorts, where, we keep it short and, talk about, usually it's a single topic situation, but where I get to review the newest console video game console to get released on the planet. And oh no, we're not talking about the Switch OLED model from Nintendo or anything like that, but we are talking about something from Nintendo, and that is none other than the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch. And you say to me, oh, Stallion, that's not really a console. Well, no, technically it is, and it has multiple games. Of course, I guess if we made the prerequisite that a console is only something that you can install other games on, I mean, you can hack these things, but anyway, all of that aside, I just have a lot of fun talking about, going to the store and getting the latest console. This is something that I had pre-ordered. They had announced it at during a Nintendo Direct months ago in 2021. And I pre-ordered it that day on Best Buy. And so I've been waiting all that time. I mean, I want to say, what was it, May when this officially got announced, I think? Or maybe it was like late April, is when they also announced, because it's Zelda's 35th anniversary, which is why they did this. It's why they did the re-release of Skyward Sword for the Switch, as well as some other things. As I've said before, I'm frankly surprised at how little overall is being done for Zelda's 35th, for Link's, I guess you could say, 35th anniversary. Considering how much was done for Mario's 35th anniversary, which was the year previous. And I mean, there was a lot, right, that we got out of that. So maybe there's more to come yet once we get past the holiday season of 2021. But for now, this is what we have. And Mario got a similar release, though I have to say, the Game & Watch release for Legend of Zelda blows away what they put out for Mario. Not that, of course, I did a review for that on Sovryn Tech as well. Not that the release for Mario was in any way weak or, not worth it. But you're definitely getting a lot more bang for your buck with the Game & Watch for Legend of Zelda. So for those that don't know what this is, it's smaller than, I would say 99% of smartphones out there. It's single screen. Of course, Zelda itself is not unheard of in the Game & Watch series. The Game & Watch series is just what it sounds like. It was something Nintendo did way back in the day, in the 80s, where they had like this, little LCD games with this, and maybe you've seen the character in like Smash Brothers games, right, where it's like Mr. Game & Watch, where it's this little, black LCD character that can, flip pancakes or whatever the hell else that it does in varying little games. And these were, little portable, kind of way before there were Game Boys. And again, before there was even a NES. Game & Watch, they were just these little handheld LCD games, kind of like the Tiger games, if you remember those. I'll never forget them. Not to say that they were great. But they would also, so they had a game on it, and then they could also tell the time, right? That's why it's Game & Watch. And that is what they're sticking to with these modern releases. First one to come out in 2020 and the next, and of course the most recent now out in 2021. And the official release date was November 12th, 2021. I went and picked mine up from Best Buy, because they hold it for you for however long. And I'll put a link to the show notes, or a link in the show notes to the launch trailer for this console. So you can, really, really see it in action. But what you're getting here in this little handheld, which, all right, hold on. Because I got to bring this up. So I played and carried around with me my Mario Game & Watch, 35th anniversary one, quite a bit ever since I got it. Like, even if I was just, traveling or visiting somewhere, it's so small and seemingly pretty tough. I would just toss it in like a pocket in my backpack or whatever, wherever I went, and would always have it. So, and I played it a lot. But I swear to you that the battery on that thing, I think maybe I've charged it twice in its entire lifetime, and the battery just doesn't die. I don't get it. Maybe I just don't play it as long, but like, I'm also impressed that it will sit at sleep mode seemingly for months on end. And you'll just hit the power button and boop, there it is. And there's still tons of battery life on it. I don't know what the deal is there, but unbelievable. Granted, it's a very simple thing what it's doing, right? Because the original Mario Game & Watch, had the original Super Mario Brothers on it. And then it also had, it had Lost Levels. And it had a Mario version of a Game & Watch game. Okay. Which the Legend of Zelda one, by the way, also has a Zelda version of a Game & Watch game. We'll talk about that a little bit. And again, it was a great package. I really liked it. I mean, even though it really only had 2 games plus the Game & Watch game, so you could say 3, more or less, I felt it was worthwhile. Now, it cost, $49.99. It was $50, right? Which is about how much, the original Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers would have cost you, back in the 80s when it came out. And the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch also came in at the same price. But I got to tell you, you're getting, again, a lot more bang for your buck with the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch. For one, it's not just, 3 games. Now it's 4. There are some interesting omissions, but I can explain why those omissions were made, or at least one of them. But essentially what you have here with the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch is, a very, very tiny screen. I mean, not, barely a couple inches, right? I mean, it's not very tiny, but it's tinier, with an odd, a bit of not an odd aspect ratio, but you can see when you play one of the games where it's very stretched, but they worked on that. You've got a D-pad to the left here. You have the B and A button, select and start, on the right-hand side. And then you have a button for game, which allows you to get to the game selection. Then a button for time, which will bring up the clock right away, which, by the way, is a very nice clock. Like it goes through an entire 12-hour cycle of Link beating the first Legend of Zelda game. Well, the clock can actually, depending upon which game you have going, can kind of change up, but it's cool because you can pick up, like if you have the clock running, which a difference here than the Mario one is you can turn on and off the auto sleep mode. So you could actually leave this running, for as long as it'll go. And like I said, the battery life's amazing on these things. You could just pick it up and you could start playing in the clock, which is pretty cool. And then there's a pause and set button, which lets you, adjust volume, like screen brightness and any other necessary features. Volume thing. I want to bring that up really fast. Because the one thing I'm not bringing up, and it charges with USB-C and has a power button. Okay. Great that it charges with USB-C, but the volume, the issue I've had with each of these, I wish they'd have a 1/8 jack on them, a headphone jack, because, with Mario, it's not so much, because with Mario, you can hear the music in your head. Yeah, it's true with Zelda. Largely, you could do that as well. But if you want to play, quietly, you can't, you're not going to be able to hear any sound. And that can be a problem, especially with Zelda, where there are a lot of enemies where, like, the sound that they make is kind of you're reliant upon those. So I feel like I'm annoyed that neither of them have had a headphone jack. I doubt that that's going to change anytime soon, but boy, it would have been nice. And, these little handheld consoles are big enough, to have a 1/8 jack. It's not like they're that thin, by no means. But the little speakers on them do very well. I just wish I could, play them without, and hear the sounds and the music. I mean, just the classic music to come from these games, with a pair of headphones. But that's not happening here. And now that I say it, I haven't tried plugging in headphones to the USB-C port. Hold on a second. Okay, well, through the magic of radio, I just tried plugging in a pair of USB-C headphones as well as headphones with a USB-C adapter, and that did not work. That would have been a neat trick if they had allowed for that, but they did not. Anyway, so the games that you are getting here, it is a who's who of classics. You are getting The Legend of Zelda, of course, the very first one, from the 1980s. You're getting its sequel from the 1980s, also Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, and this is kind of a shocker where they put it above board of the Mario edition of Game & Watch. You're also getting Link's Awakening in the original Game Boy version at that. It is not the DX version, and it's interesting that this gets included considering that Nintendo, just in the past couple of years, released a remake of Link's Awakening for the Switch, and a very good one at that. And then, of course, there's the Zelda-themed Game & Watch game on it that looks like an LCD kind of game called Vermin, which is basically whack-a-mole with, a character that looks like Link, or at least his head does. Now, there are some other games included in this as well, where there's like a timer mode where you can take on, how quickly can you defeat these 21 enemies, which is really interesting. I mean, so there's stuff here that is unique to the Game & Watch device itself, which, I don't know that any of it makes it worth $50. I mean, it was hard to say that like the Mario Game & Watch was worth $50. Right? Even though being able to play Lost Levels was really slick. But when you think about, Super Mario All-Stars and some other things that, makes it really easy to play those games just about anywhere. I don't know, how it's because it's not just that either. Like, okay, Super Mario Brothers is just one of the greatest games of all time. Lost Levels equally, I would say even, granted it's very difficult, but it's one of the greatest games of all time. It's just more of Super Mario Brothers essentially. But at the end of the day, the Super Mario Brothers games, at least those original ones, all the way up to, I would argue, up until we get to Super Mario World, are fairly short affairs, right? And they're not complex. Again, some of that can be subjective, but bottom line being, they're fairly simplistic games. They're beautiful in that simplicity, but they're simplistic. As to where the Zelda games, including the 3 available here, maybe Zelda 2 not so much, but including the 3 available here, are multi-hour, action RPG style games. I mean, these are games you could spend months on, if you really wanted to. You're getting a lot more, even though you're only getting one more game and you are getting games that are available in a million ways, you are getting essentially a lot more game by hour than you did with the Mario Brothers Game & Watch. And so, with that, I do put it as, okay, yeah, it's worth the $50. It's a collector's item, maybe, and a nicety, but I do think it ends up being worth the $50 with the amount of games that you're getting. And, it's amazing how many people I talk to that have never played these games. And I think they're well worth it. The original Zelda, I still think holds up really well. I mean, you're going to have a lot more fun if you watch a guide, especially to see, wow, just how many tricks and how many secrets and all this other stuff are actually in that game. Would it have been great if A Link to the Past was on it? Yes. And a lot of people were wondering, why isn't it? Well, I mean, one of the big reasons is, they have a set style for these Game & Watch devices, and that set style does not include another 4 buttons, to be able to, playable, mashable buttons, to be able to play, and take advantage of everything that you need to do in A Link to the Past. So that's really what it comes down to, is that this present Game & Watch design is definitely made just for Nintendo games and Game Boy, up until, say, the Game Boy Advance. So while it's a curious omission that it doesn't have, they didn't go with, Link's Awakening DX, which was for the Game Boy Color, that again had that colorization and then some other optimizations as well, and additional stuff. It's curious that they didn't do that, but it's not as that's odder than it is that they didn't do Link to the Past. Like, I totally understand why that didn't happen. Now, as far as how does it feel to play these games, I mean, the original Legend of Zelda is just an absolute classic of classics. If one wanted to argue is the greatest game of all time, I'm not going to argue against you. It feels great. Like the controls, I mean, the D-pad's a little tiny, but overall the controls, feel really good. Zelda 2, I'll admit it. I've never beaten this game. and I think I'm going to, and I think this is true for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are going to use this device to finally get through Zelda 2 because that game is such a pain in the ass. Even though I think there are like really great ROM hacks out there that make it a much more enjoyable game. This might be the time to go through Zelda 2. The game that I'd probably play the most on here, ironically, or maybe it's not ironically, is what I think is the best of the package, and that is Link's Awakening. This is one of my favorite games of all time. Actually, the greatest and number one Sovryn Tech listener of all time, and he will always be remembered, and he always will be, Chris Pasquini, his favorite game of all time was Link's Awakening. And I can't help but think of him every time that I play it. In fact, with the remake of Link's Awakening was what basically inspired me to finally get a Switch, because I was happy, and I still have a back catalog on my 3DS that I haven't gotten to. And I could have just kept playing that for till today, to get through so many games like Cold Step Revolt and a bunch of other ones that I still haven't even touched on the 3DS. But that remake, I know it excited Chris, and it excited me. And, he's missed, but especially, with the version on the Switch and now this very, very well done compact version on Game & Watch, none of us have to miss playing Chris's favorite game. Now, it's interesting. So, because again, Link's Awakening was originally for the Game Boy, so it has that, puke green color. It has a little more of a grayish tinge to it. The screen is not the normal aspect ratio of the Game Boy. So you can actually switch between it filling the entire screen or going to the original mode where it's basically a 1-to-1 perfect square. And it's fine either way. It looks a little stretched when you're not playing in the original mode, but again, it's the classic, right? It's Link's Awakening, and it plays absolutely beautifully. And that really is a game that you can play over and over again. Nintendo has added in some nice little cheat codes and secrets into some of these games where, for example, in most of them, you can hold down the A button for 5 seconds before you start the game, when you're at the put in your name screen, and it will give you full hearts. There are some other nice secrets that they have built into these games, which I thought was really nice. Again, gives you some degree of replay value. I would argue that, you can, if you're a speedrunner, you're going to replay a lot of this shit anyway, but I don't think that the controls are that D-pad is really tiny. I don't know how well that works for speedrunning. Regardless, this is a very nice package. And, one of the best secrets I felt, and there are a lot to go through. I'll link in the show notes to some of them. On the back, and this was a nice new feature, on the back, there is a Triforce on the back of the device. And when the lights are out, or actually really even in broad daylight, I feel like you could kind of see it. But particularly when the lights are out, the Triforce on the back of the Game & Watch lights up. Nice touch. Another nice touch. And speaks to, I think, a lot of companies, wanting to get more into eco and sustainability and all of this. And I really wish they did this with the Mario one, but the packaging is essentially the exact same as the Mario Game & Watch. But now the box that the device rests in when you pull it out doubles as a stand. And it has, to the left of it, it has a nice little Triforce. It has a cutout so you can easily pull out the device, and also, if you wanted to, leave a USB-C, leave it plugged in. And it looks nice. It's cardboard. It's black cardboard, but it's a nice touch. I know there's a little mini industry around making stands for these things, even though really you could use any plate stand if you wanted, or mini plate stand. But I really like this thing, and it's one that I would definitely play a lot more than I would the Mario Brothers Game & Watch. just because there's a lot more to play here, just by hours, just by length available in these games and the complexity. There's just a lot more to do here. And I will be going through Zelda 2 on this. That's going to be my, fun time with it and try and justify the purchase other than it looking nice, in the entertainment room. And now these are being sold for a limited time, just like was true for the Mario Game & Watch. But, here's the thing, folks. As exciting as it is to get it on launch day, right? The new console. The Mario Game & Watch, you can still buy often enough for even less, or maybe like $10 more than when it first hit retail. Even though it's, well out of production. Also, I don't think a whole lot of people are going to hold on to these. I mean, because in many ways, because again, you can get these games on a million different devices. You can play them on Switch Online. I mean, there's plenty of ways to play these games. I don't think people aren't going to take them too seriously. And I think if somebody was selling their collection, it'd be one of the first things they'd get rid of. So don't worry if you don't get one right now or later on you decide that you want one or whatever. I do hope that there are more. I would like it to get to the Super Nintendo era. I don't know if it's going to get there. But I'd really, really love I'd totally take a Metroid, Game & Watch, because that 35th anniversary is hot and happening too. And of course, Metroid's going through a bit of a renaissance, with the success and deserved success of Metroid Dread. But that's one where I feel that maybe they would switch. If they're going to release Super Nintendo games, maybe Metroid would, bring in that charge of, it's just hard to imagine a Metroid collection without, without Super Metroid, right, for the Super Nintendo. I'd love to see a Metroid one that also, if they're going to be putting Game Boy games on, yes, it'd be fine to have Metroid 2 and not the Samus Returns version for the 3DS. But I would love to have Metroid Zero Mission or Metroid Fusion. Zero Mission is a remake of the first game. I think that'd be brilliant if they did that. So, but again, that was for the Game Boy Advance, and, we're talking about shoulder buttons and other things. This body type can do it. So there's no reason that they can't do it. But we'll see. I hope they do more. I get the sense that this is selling pretty well, but, time will tell what we do end up getting in 2022. Along with, I'll take a Metroid Game & Watch and some news around Metroid Prime 4, and maybe we can get that Metroid Prime trilogy on Switch finally. So anyway, I'll wrap this up here. I think this is a total buy, but you've got to be into Zelda, for it to be worthwhile. There's a lot of fun to be had on it, especially if you're a retro gamer, and you don't even want to bother with a Switch. There's good times to be had on these little Game & Watches, and they do look nice when you line them up or whatever. So if you're into having some shit on your shelves, you could do worse than these little devices, and they do make very nice clocks, I gotta say. And again, there's a lot of hidden little, I wouldn't even call them mini games, little like mini gameplays, maybe you could call them, that are on this. It makes for an interesting package. So do check it out. I am very pleased to have mine. And that will wrap up this Sovryn short. I will see all of you on the other side.